tell us a little about how you got into shooting, your journey in the sport? How did it all begin with you, for you?
So Army had started this scheme, talent hunt scheme for all Army kids called Mission Olympics Catch Them Young. So they were spotting talents across different sports, and I just happened to try it by fluke.
In fact, the Indian shooting team this year at the Olympics has been phenomenal with 3 medals this time.
We've got 3 medals, as you mentioned. An Indian to get 2 medals at one edition of the Olympics, so setting a history in a way.
You secured the Olympic quota this time for India. It must have been a proud moment for you. Do tell us a little about the selection process and what's in the works for you.
I got the Olympic quota for Paris 2024 Olympics last year. Any country can't directly participate in the Olympics.
Domestic competition itself has increased so much.
The top 10 or 15 in the country are shooting as good as the top 8 finalists of the World Cup.
Welcome to Raising an Athlete, a podcast for aspiring athletes and their parents. The Indian shooting has seen a remarkable transformation over the past few years. Once a sport which was dominated primarily by athletes from the army, it's now drawing younger talent from diverse backgrounds. This shift has paid off on the world stage, with India winning 3 bronze medals in the recently concluded Paris Olympics. The sport's growing popularity, supported by grassroots programs and increased visibility, is inspiring a new generation of shooters. Today, we are thrilled to have with us Shriyanka Sadangi, a great example of this new wave. Shriyanka has been an international rifle shooter and a member of the Indian shooting team since 2009. Specializing in the 10-meter air rifle and 50-meter 3-position events, she has earned over 32 international medals for India, including a World Cup bronze. She's also the 2022 national champion. She has secured an Olympic quota for the Paris 2024 Games with 2 World Championship appearances under her belt. In today's episode, we'll explore how shooting in India is evolving, know more about Shriyanka's journey, and also how aspiring athletes can take their first step in this exciting world of shooting. Hi Shriyanka, welcome to Raising an Athlete.
Thank you so much, Amita, for having me, and I look forward to our conversation today.
I want to begin by asking you about, you secured the Olympic quota this time for India. It must have been a proud moment for you. How did it really feel to achieve that feat? And do tell us a little about the selection process and what's in the works for you.
Yes, so I'm a rifle shooter and I play in the 50-meter rifle event, and I got the Olympic quota for Paris 2024 Olympics last year at the Asian Championship in Changwon in Korea. Definitely, it's one of the most memorable moments that I have in the sport for me because as it works out, any country can't directly participate in the Olympics. You have to secure a quota place or, your berth for participating at that particular event in the Olympics. So getting a quota enables representation in that particular event at the Olympics. It definitely felt really good because, so many years of hard work, so many years of working towards it. And I've had a really long career, so, over a decade. And in that, there have been a lot of ups and downs, various things that I have had to go through. So finally coming to this juncture where I could get the Olympic quota definitely felt very reassuring, and it was even more motivating because it pushed me to get better, to learn more and feel more excited about the sport.
In fact, the Indian shooting team this year at the Olympics has been phenomenal with 3 medals this time. Manu Bakar, of course, making history with her 2 medals. Do tell us about your teammates. You must have spent a lot of time together. What do you think contributed to their success, the success of the Indian team this time?
Yes, so shooting has had a phenomenal show this time. We've got 3 medals, as you mentioned. And Manu has done exceptionally well. She's the first Indian female or an Indian to get 2 medals at one edition of the Olympics. So setting a history in a way. And I've definitely spent a lot of time with these guys. In fact, Swapnil Kusale, who got the medal in the 50-meter 3-position event, is a very, very close friend of mine. So it feels immensely amazing to see these people who've been around us. We've all been training together for so many years now, especially like Manu and Sarabjot are still young, but Swapnil is like my contemporary, and we've been together in the team since 2013, and almost again going to be more than 10 years, and we've all seen each other grow up from juniors to these senior athletes who are participating in the World Cups, winning those, getting Olympic quotas, setting world records. So it's been an incredible journey of a lot of growth and a lot of learning together. And I do feel like these guys have shown exceptional mental strength, resilience to go out there and perform so well on the day where it was actually needed. And I feel that's incredible. And another question that you asked me about how Indian shooting has come up and how it's what I think is the reason for them to be able to perform so well is that I feel like our National Rifle Association, along with the government and all, for the past couple of years now, they have formulated a system wherein a lot of focus is being given to the growth of shooters for grooming them. So it started around 2013-14, where a lot of focus was given on grooming junior athletes. A junior athlete program was started where from grassroots level, the juniors who would just come fresh into the team, they were groomed. And one of the most key points here is that we've got the older shooters, the shooters of our previous generation, with the likes of, Dipali Deshpande, Suma Shiru, Jaspal Rana, and all of these people. They have come up and taken the role of coaches for the team, and their own experience as athletes, their own experience in these competitions have contributed a lot in shaping a system now which is able to bring out the best in shooters, which is able to hone them not just in their technical aspects, but I also feel a major contribution and a major growth has been seen in the inclusion of sports science in the team. So earlier, the focus used to be, okay, just go play and all of that. But we've given a lot of importance to sports psychology, to nutrition, to fitness, strength and conditioning. And now we have a very well-oiled system of young, eager experts who are with us through the clock, around the clock, through the year, and we all work as a team. So there's a lot of communication between all the concerned parties, and I feel like that has contributed to a good environment where a shooter is honed not just in the technical aspects of the sport, but overall, and which helps in going out and performing well. Because earlier it was just about, going and participating, and very few athletes used to stand out and get medals. But now the system is such that even junior athletes who come into the team, the mindset has changed so much that we believe that we can go out and we can bring medals, and hence we're able to do that. That's an interesting
point you shared. In fact, I think I'd seen one of your interviews where you spoke about the fact that the domestic competition itself has increased so much that sometimes winning perhaps in an international competition may be slightly easier, but just getting the top spot on the national team itself is proving to be tough, which I think is so encouraging, because that kind of level of competition shows that we are in the right direction in the game.
Definitely, I agree to that, because earlier there was a huge gap with the top shooters in India vis-a-vis shooters outside. We did have a couple of 2-3 shooters who were exceptionally good in India. They would go out and they would do well. But now, if you take a general average score averages of our national championships and all, the top 10 or 15 in the country are shooting as good as the top 8 finalists of the World Cup. So it's in fact more difficult to secure a spot in the team in India. And it turns out to be good for us, because when we prepare here, when we are competing against a solid set of shooters, we know that we are preparing for the best in the country. Not in the country, for best in the world. So we are prepared to go out and win with everybody, having prepared in such tough situations.
Can you tell us a little about how you got into shooting? Your journey in the sport, how did it all begin for you?
Okay, I started way back in 2006-07. My father, he was serving in the Indian Army, and Colonel Rajavardhan Rathod had just recently won the Olympic medal in Athens 2004. So Army had started this scheme, talent hunt scheme for all Army kids called Mission Olympics Catch Them Young. So they were spotting talents across different sports. And I just happened to try it by fluke. My father was posted in a place called Abohar in Punjab, and I just tried it by fluke because all my school friends were trying shooting. So I just went and I did well initially. So there were various level of selection trials, and in under 12 years category all over India, I stood first and I got selected to come to Delhi and train for it. So, here is where the role of the family and role of my parents are so important, because they allowed me to come to Delhi. They were very supportive of the decision, and they felt like pursuing sports will, you know, overall shape my personality better, and it'll make me a well-groomed, rounded person. So they were okay with me coming to Delhi and train, and that's how it just began. Like I do feel like I'm really lucky that I got the support of my parents, and I do have a family history of sports as well. My father, was a Ranji Trophy cricket player, so I've had a good balance of academics and sports in the family.
So you mentioned that it was part of the talent spotting, where you performed well. But when was the first time? How old were you when you picked a rifle?
So it was around then only. I had never picked up a rifle before that. I was 11 years when it happened. I was in class 6th, and it was just, again, like I mentioned, a talent hunt scheme. I just went and I started shooting. So there initially they just check your basics, like how when we go to the doctor they check the vitals. So here in shooting they just basically check whether your grouping is good, how's your stance, and all of that. And mine turned out to be good naturally. And so I kept further clearing different levels, and first time was completely by fluke, and I'm just so grateful that it happened.
Which also makes one think about the kind of skills that are required for it. Like, what are the kind of skills that shooting requires, and which one of those are something innate, and which are the ones that you develop through training?
So I don't think like shooting is a sport which is pretty inclusive in many aspects, and we don't have any particular characteristics or very specific aspects that are needed for shooters. So I feel it is something which a lot of young people, youngsters can try their hand at and figure out whether they like that sport or not. And it's also one of those sports which does not have any age limit to it. Like, it's not a sport where you need to be falling within a certain age bracket to pursue and do well. So we have a lot of shooters who do very well at very young age, and there are shooters who do very well in their 30s and 40s as well. So it's one sport where, and I also feel like more than having those predetermined qualities for shooting is a sport which shapes and develops a lot of your qualities as and when you pursue it. So I remember I used to be an extremely active and talkative child, and bursting with a lot of energy initially. So I still am a lot of those, but I feel like it's been able to channelize all of that in such a positive way, and there's such a calmness about me which has come after pursuing the sport. The maturity of handling those emotions, the maturity of dealing with all the goods and the bads and the ups and the downs. So I feel like any of the sport that anyone decides to take definitely helps in shaping an individual's personality, and it is always for the better.
So you don't feel there are any innate natural abilities that are required. It's as you train, those skills can be honed.
Definitely, I do feel that because it's something that you can learn. There would be some shooters who are talented and who are gifted. So they may start at an advantage, but there's nothing that a newbie who is genuinely interested in the sport cannot learn and do well in that.
Tell us a little about the sport itself. Like, how is shooting different from other sports?
Abhinav Bindra once said that if meditation was a sport, it would be shooting. So I do believe that shooting is one sport which all sports use a lot of mental, it's mental angle to it. But I do feel like shooting is one sport which definitely feels like yoga, meditation blended in one, because you feel so present and connected with your body, with your muscles, your breathing, your shooting process and everything at one time, that it I would say it's more of a mental sport than physical. So not to say that you don't need a lot of physical abilities for it, you need to be extremely fit and everything. But it also encompasses a lot of mental strength that you have to develop, because in those situations, it's a very precise sport. It's a precision sport. So to be able to stand, like for an example, I'll tell you, the 10-meter event, the distance is at 10 meters, and the target size of a 10 is you take a pen and you put it on the paper, just a pen tip, pen dot. It's that small. So to be able to hit that for all 60 shots consistently, being in that zone, being in that mode, that requires a lot of mental training. So I feel like shooting that way is different because it's so much about, and again, it's one of those sports where you can't be really expressive of your emotions. So when you see shooters, you don't really see them feeling angry, throwing punches here and there, or throwing their rackets or equipments or anything. You look at them and it's like water, they flow like water. They're flowing, but in that smooth way. And it's so much about controlling those emotions because you cannot let the emotions take hold of you. You stay in the present moment and
I
you
remember
focus on your
reading that
process.
once in Abhinav Bindra's autobiography, where he speaks that when like if it's footballers and they're frustrated and they can use all kind of cuss words to get their emotions out, but unfortunately, shooters don't
Yeah.
have such a choice. Have to.
Yeah, not at all. You see all of them just like in their mode, in their zone, and just going ahead with
Right.
the
And
whatever
also
they're
tell
doing.
us a little about the different shooting formats, because what happens is that people are not really familiar so much with the sport of how they differ, and how does one even choose a format?
So we have primarily three kinds of categories. That is rifle, pistol, and shotgun. And rifle is the normal rifle within which they have different events. They have 10 meters, they have 50 meters, and they have 300 meters. And for pistol, we have 10 meters and 25 meters. That is, when I talk about 10 meters, 25 meters, it is at the distance from which you shoot. Then you have shotgun, which has trap and skeet. So these are three major broad categories within the shooting sport, and it depends on what kind of equipment they use. So the differentiation is on the equipment and the distances. Pistol is the small pistol that you use, but the distances are 10 and 25. For rifle, you have 10 meters, 50 meters. And for shotgun, you have the distance is the same, but there are different trap and skeet within shotgun that differentiates it. Although they're somewhat technical to explain right now. But for anyone who wants to know more about this, they can definitely go to the International Shooting Federation website, ISSF, or they can Google about it. There's a lot of information available within each category how
Okay.
these events are
And for a
differentiated.
beginner, how do they go about choosing which format? Like, how did you arrive at that decision? Was it your own personal preference? Is that something that your coach guides you with? How do you decide which categories or which formats you participate in?
For me, it just happened because I tried rifle and I liked it, and I just went ahead with it. What anyone else who's starting new in this sport can do is there are a lot of with shooting gaining popularity now and shooting doing well. There are a lot of clubs and which have opened clubs and small shooting ranges that have opened all across the country. So for anyone who's interested in taking up the sport, they can visit one of those shooting clubs where they primarily have the rifle and pistol both available. Now, shooting is a slightly expensive sport, so investing in the equipments right away doesn't make sense because someone who's starting out at a young age, you don't really know whether they will feel passionate about the sport or not, whether they'll want to pursue it for longer. So, the best thing would be to go to a club, try out both the events, and see what you feel better for, what you feel more suited for. The coaches at the range, the people who are there, they would be able to guide you. Try both of those events and see what works
Right.
for you and then take it
In
up.
fact, you mentioned that this is an expensive sport, and traditionally in India, we've seen, Army has been a big supporter. Like you said, you spoke about the scheme that Army had. Have you seen profile change for more civilians come in, or are there opportunities for civilians given that there is expense involved? Are there scholarships? Can they be supported in their journey?
Yes, definitely. So I've seen a lot of change in the whole shooting landscape. Earlier, like you mentioned, it was dominated by the forces, especially in the men category. It was completely dominated by either Army, Navy, or Air Force. And there were shooters, because they were given the facilities, the infrastructure, equipments, and all, they were able to take it up and do well. Now, over the past 7, 8 years, over the past 10 years, there has been a tremendous change in the civilians coming in and taking over the sport. And that has been primarily because of the involvement of sports NGOs and a lot of government schemes which have come out, which are helping shooters across the country at various levels to take up the sport and providing them with a lot of help like infrastructure, equipments and all.
Yeah.
So for example, I'll give you a few things. There's a scheme started by the government called Khelo India. Now that is definitely doing well. So it spots talent at the school level, Khelo India school games. So if you're just starting out and you do well at that school level, you are in fact selected to come and train at the Khelo India center that is closest to your house. And that center provides you with everything. So the government also gives you a stipend, I think of about 10,000 or 15,000 every month. And they will support you by giving you the range facilities. They'll give you a gym facility. They'll give you equipments and everything. And similarly, there's Khelo India, there is NCOE, that is National Center of Excellence. So Delhi, Dr. Karni Singh Range, where I currently train, is a NCOE center where a lot of top athletes are there and they're all training together. So we are given our sports science team is also present there, health facilities, hostel, everything is there. Along with this, that sports NGO part that I was talking about, there are organizations and foundations such as Go Sports Foundation, who support me and who've been supporting me for many years now, Olympic Gold Quest, Reliance Foundation. What they do is, since the time sports was added as a part of the corporate CSR, a lot of corporates are coming out and trying to help the athletes and sports persons. But now it's very difficult for them to reach out to individuals and know who requires what and how to help them. So that's where these organizations come into play. They are like a bridge, or they're like a gap between those organizations who want to help us and finding and mapping the athletes who need help all across. And it's not just for Olympic sports, it's for all Paralympic sports as well. So all of these organizations are really supporting athletes. They select them, they provide them with everything that is needed in terms of sports science help. They provide all that expenditure for traveling, competitions, training, equipments, and all of that. So slowly, the scenario is changing a lot. Initially, when someone takes up a sport, of course, initial investment, you have to do it yourself. You have to find your club. You have to find a decent coach. You have to see whether you're working out, it works for you or not. But once you take it up and once you're at a decent level and once you start doing well, there are a lot of these platforms which are there to help athletes these days. And that is also, again, one of the reasons why, you see so many young shooters doing so well. This time, the Olympic team consisted of so many shooters who were, I think about 80% of the Olympic team was of shooters who were below the age of 24. Yeah. Just imagine that. So that is happening because when athletes get this kind of environment, when they get this kind of support at a young age in the beginning of their career, so they're not just going there and struggling and saying कि नहीं बस हम बाहर जाके participate करेंगे, वो ही काफी है. No, they're going there with the mentality that we can win. There is seriousness from the beginning. So, when I remember back in 2009-10 when I just started in the junior team, we all were serious about our sport, but there was a lot of fun and games happening because there was the proper structure of coaching was not present at that time. So now with the previous years, like I told you, the junior program when it started, we had a proper routine, like wake up, do yoga in the morning, you're doing workout in the evening, everything is monitored. Now, a lot of shooters are being educated about the kind of food they should be eating, the kind of lifestyle they should be living. So when you have that kind of environment and all the kind of facility and knowledge available to you, people who want to use it can use it to their advantage.
Yeah, I think the early set of shooters from India perhaps did not have access to much of this infrastructure. And I think credit to them, credit to Abhinav Bindra, to Gagan Narang, and so many of them who have actually gone through that difficult journey and are now enabling, a new generation of shooters by supporting them, with both the infrastructure and the know-how of it.
Definitely, their guidance means so much to the shooting team. Like I remember 2011, I was spotted by Gagan Bhaiya, and I was training at, I was selected to be a part of the Gun for Glory Shooting Academy, his first batch of shooters who were there. And that experience has changed me as a shooter, It has taught me the professionalism of the sport. How to train, that whole structure of a routine, following this, that, all of it is where I learned it from. So all of these shooters were actually coming out and giving back to the sport, I feel is amazing because the sport has so much to learn from them and their experiences.
And also what you said was striking for me about the change in mindset, because again, this was an example that I think Abhinav again speaks about in his book, where if you told an Indian athlete that you're good, they would probably become defensive. This is an international coach who makes an observation about, Indian athletes, whereas that has shifted so much today, that the level of confidence and the change in mindset, what you said, it's not just about participating anymore. It is about aspiring to be the very best at the highest level. Uh, I want to ask you. You spoke
Yes.
about very young people coming into the sport. In fact, generally that's a trend in sports now, that the profile is turning younger in almost all the sports, and it's also seen as an advantage if you start early. Like if you're young and you start early, then you have the right exposure. Is there such an advantage in shooting? Because you said that in shooting the age really doesn't matter. Is there an advantage if you start young?
Even though the age doesn't matter, but if you start early, so in the early formative years, we're in that whole malleable shape. People, if we get the correct guidance, if we get the correct kind of training, and our basics are correct, we can actually do really well. Because we're more open to ideas, we're more open to learning, we're more open to all of those things at a young age. So I feel like a very good age to start shooting is around 11, 12 years. When you're around 11, 12 is the ideal time if you can start shooting. And in early teens is a perfect time to get in as well. Because I do feel like getting a good base and starting out early can shape your entire mentality, you can shape your entire personality into blending with the sport. Because once we are older, it's not like you cannot do it. There are shooters who've done exceptionally well once they started late also. But I feel like they do have to put in the extra effort, because by that time you already have a certain mindset going. You have a certain lifestyle that you've adopted to. So you have to make major changes to that. Whereas when you're young, you can actually just seamlessly blend it into your whole routine, and it gets easier.
Another thing I want to ask you is that in context of long-term athlete development, these days there is a belief that sometimes early specialization is not a good thing, that to be a good athlete, you should actually be playing when you're young a lot of sports. And I'm asking this because a lot of people listening in to us would be parents and young athletes. How does that work in shooting? Does early specialization help, or are you better off playing a lot of sports? And how does playing other sports actually help in shooting?
I think it's an amalgamation of both, the way you say it. Early specialization helps once you understand and once you know that you have an interest for the sport. If someone is playing at an early age and they're just trying it out, but you tell them, no, you have to be serious and you have to do that. So first and foremost, one thing that is very clear is it's very, very important to enjoy what you're doing, to enjoy the sport. So sport is not something that can be forced on someone. You can force them to do their workouts. You can force them to go for training. You can force them to stand or do your holding, do your practice. But if it does not come from within, it will not really transform into a good, and I'm not talking about result. I'm talking about it will not be a good, the outcome will not be that good because they're not really interested in it. So anything, any field, whether it's sport, whether it's any hobby or any other thing that anyone pursues, it's very important to enjoy the process, to want it, to genuinely want it, because excelling in sport requires a lot of dedication, a lot of resilience. There'll be so many things that you have to do, so many sacrifices you have to make, a lot of hard work and sweat goes behind the scenes which people don't see. So to be willing to do that, you really need to enjoy the sport. You need to be wanting it yourself. So one thing that is very important is, at an early stage, let them play it all. Let them try out different things. Let them see what they feel more interested in. And if you see that there is an inclination towards something, to a particular sport, then encourage that. And if you feel like it will help, okay, thoda sa specialization karna chahiye, thoda try karna chahiye, do that and see. Don't really force it on someone. And I feel like a multiple sport background helps them be more confident about themselves, feel more good about themselves, and that confidence goes a long way in the sporting career.
Going back to what we were discussing about the different formats in shooting, is it common for shooters to specialize in any one format, or do athletes often train and compete across multiple formats?
It's more common to specialize in one format because all the different formats are very different from each other. So if you want to be playing it professionally and performing at a very elite level, then I think specializing in one format makes more sense because you'll be training your body, your muscles and all according to that. There have been some shooters who've shifted from one event to the other after when they've sort of completed their journey in one event, and then they have shifted. Otherwise, it's a common practice to pursue just one
And again,
event.
are there any specific mental or physical attributes that make them suited for one or the other format?
Not specifically again, because this is something which you need to try and see whether pistol is more suitable to you, rifle is more suitable to you. Because when you start at a young age, again, it's like a clean slate that you are starting with. Someone who's not tried shooting, someone who's not tried both the events, they will not know what either of it entails. So when they go to the shooting range and then they try both of it, they can just see and feel it and do it. Because there are equal chances of doing well in both of them, and there'll be coaches to personally, depending on shooter to shooter, guide them about which may be a little more suitable to them.
Also, Shriyanka, do share that in India we've seen that there are certain states which have become centers of excellence for particular sports. Is that a case for shooting? Are there particular places which have become a center of excellence?
We earlier used to have, like I mentioned, and we were discussing that army used to be very dominant in the male, men's category, and women. We had a lot of shooters coming from Maharashtra earlier, especially in the rifle event. But now, with the onset of civilians joining in, I think it's the entire country which is doing really well in the sport. Although we do have some governments which have come out and supported the shooting field so much, and their athletes are doing really well. Like MP State has a specific shooting academy, and they have a very good sports program there. So they have given very good athletes, and they have a very good system present there. But now with the opening of Khelo India and all of these centers all across the country, I think it's balanced out, and we have so many states which are giving equal kind of facilities, and they're doing very well in that. So it's not a state-specific
I think
center
even in
anymore.
your biography, when I read, I found so many different mentions. You've represented Orissa and you've trained in Pune. So the spread seems across different places in the country. Lovely. Okay,
Yes,
so
it
we'll
is.
change gears a bit, and I do want to talk about balancing sports and academics, because that's a constant conversation for parents and young athletes. Now, you've had an impressive academic journey. You've studied at St. Stephen's, you've done your MBA, and you're now pursuing your PhD in sports management. How have you managed to balance, the rigorous demands of both academics and professional shooting?
Now, when I look back at it, in fact, it's a very good question, because when I look back at it, sometimes in that moment, it used to seem so difficult. Like, it's definitely not easy balancing sport and academics when you're doing sports at such a level. So I remember since my school days, there'd be a lot of periods of time when I'd be traveling out for competitions and playing my matches and everything. But one thing I would like to point out is that I personally, genuinely, 100% believe that both of these things can go hand in hand. And in fact, if I feel like shooting has helped me in academics, because even though I was able to give little time to studies, my concentration, my focus had improved so much because of the sport that I was able to focus well within that less time. So it was quality over quantity, and I was able to do that. Like, I remember, like, a couple of instances I'll mention. When I was giving my 12th board exams, I was training in Pune for the entire year, and my school was in Delhi, Delhi Public School, Vasant Kunj. And again, this is where the role of your school, your parents, and your teachers comes in, wherein their support means so much. So that year 2012, when I passed out of school, was one of my best years. I had won about 8 international medals that year, a Junior World Cup individual medal, and I was barely able to attend school. But my school, they were cooperative. They gave me the permission to write the exams, and the teachers went out of the way to help me in whatever way I needed it. So I remember for my boards, I had my exam on the 5th, and 4th and, 3rd and 4th, I had selection trials in Delhi. So I remember my mom driving me, and, both of us reading through the content and whatever I had to do, and then just playing matches on both those days completely, doing well in the matches, and then doing well in my boards as well. Similarly, there have been a lot of instances in college where I've done my graduation from St. Stephen's and post-graduation from there as well. So there's this May, the month of May is very important for sports also, because every year we used to have the Junior World Cup that time, and we had our exams also coinciding at the same time, the semester exams. So there have been instances where, I remember I've flown back, reached India in the morning, afternoon mein, given my exams, ek do din mein, then gone back again out to play, come back. So It has been a roller coaster managing all of it, but I do feel like it has made me a stronger person, a more well-groomed, all-round person in that aspect. And sport definitely helps enhancing the studies when you can balance both of it. It's difficult to do it, it's daunting, but at the end of the day, you have to remember that both those things are equally important and you have to give weightage. And equally important doesn't mean that at every at every stage of the year or every stage of your career you give equal importance. It means that understanding that at some point maybe the sport will take up the first preference and the education will fall second, but at a later phase when I have the exams or something, education will move ahead and the sport will come. So balancing it is the key, and taking help with from your teachers, from your parents, from your coaches, making them understand this concept is
because
also very
often
important.
you hear this narrative of saying कि आप एक रास्ता पकड़ो life में, या आप मतलब whatever you want to do, you should do it well, and that becomes a little tricky, especially with sports where it's highly competitive. You may not always know what's the road ahead, and people are trying kind of balance out the two. What would be your advice to young athletes who may be struggling between like balancing their sports with their studies?
So I'll definitely, it is very difficult. So in this case, like I said again, the whole system has to support. So I remember reaching out to so many of my teachers and telling them that, like sir or ma'am, that I am serious about my studies as well. But there will be times when I'll not be able to give you the submissions in time, when I'll not be there, I'll be traveling so much. So bear with that. I genuinely want to do it. And so time flexibility is definitely something which is required in sports, because both the calendars are so daunting and they're so full that it's very difficult to manage it. So for the parents, like, parents can go and speak to teachers in school and the principals and all and seek their help that it will be done. So problem comes where the teachers and all think that इनको तो पढ़ना ही नहीं है, इनको तो करना ही नहीं है, और वो sports का बहाना लेके पढ़ाई नहीं करना चाहते. Yeah, so you have to assure them that that's not the case what is happening. If it's a genuine case, I think people will end up cooperating. So you have to tell them that, okay, I want to do it, I will do it, but there may be time constraints, so I need a little extra time. Or, I could, like, I remember in my graduation and post-graduation days going to my teachers and telling them that, instead of 2 submissions or 3 submissions in a month, can I just give all 3 of them together at the end of the month because I'm traveling? So then there have been some teachers who've been very cooperative. They've helped me out. There have been some who've not been so cooperative. But then I guess everyone encounters that. And coming out of all of this makes you so much stronger. Like running around giving those exams, being able to do it. Now when I look back at it and I'm like, oh God, how did I ever do it? But I did it, and that's probably what has also shaped me into becoming who I am.
I also feel that that's true. Sometimes we underestimate asking for help from people. It's something I've experienced as a parent also. My daughter plays golf, and she may have frequent tournaments coming up, and the class teacher may be aware, but the other teachers may not know why the work for this child is not complete, and why are they on leave, which seems like often to them, even though it might be like once a month now. And when you communicate with them, when you speak with them, they're more than encouraging. So there is support if we ask for it. So I think that's a very important point that you shared.
Definitely, because a lot of the mentality of people is changing so much, and people are encouraging co-curricular activities and sports and everything together. So, and again, like I always believe in the fact that if you don't ask, you would never know. Like we just presume मना कर देंगे, ठीक है पूछ के तो देखो, मना तो करना होगा तो कर देंगे. But what if they don't? What if they agree to it? What if they help you out? So, then you're adding another team, few more people into your team who are helping you work towards your goal.
In fact, I also wanted to ask, what inspired you to pursue a PhD in sports management, and how do you plan to use your academic background to further your career or contribute to the world of sports?
So I feel like while I was doing my MBA, I came across a couple of people who were doing their PhD, and I thought, okay, fine, that is something I can think of. So I sat down with my guide and we've discussed a couple of ideas. It's still in the initial phase of it, and I've not, because of the whole Olympic year, I've actually not actively worked too much on it yet. Again, like the time flexibility, my guide has been super cooperative, and he's been like, okay, fine, you go and you focus on the sport for now and we'll get back to it. But I do feel like I want to, now that sport has become such an industry, now that sport has become something that is influencing so many lives. It's such a like you talk about Virat Kohli, Saina Nehwal, Manu Bakar and all. So these are people like youngsters are now looking up to them as idols. So I want to do something about a mix of sport marketing and the impact it has on the society, on shaping the young minds. So I want to do
Okay.
work something on
And
this angle.
shooting is also seen as an extremely specialized sport, right? What career paths can an athlete, in shooting explore both during and after their competitive career?
So during the sport, what happens is a lot of shooters mostly are either studying, and once they're done with their education and all, we do have a couple of. It's not actively, if you're like playing at an elite level, it's not actively possible for you to be working, I think, in the private sector as much, because not a lot of offices or companies and all will give you the leave to be absent for so long, or to constantly keep traveling for your sport. So I feel the government sector is good in that. There are a lot of government institutions which give out jobs in sport. But I also feel like personally these days, the young generation is very driven. So they are coming out with so many self-employment opportunities out of it. There is a lot of coaching that you can do after that. You can come into the sports administration part, which we definitely need. Like the sports administration part, sports management is coming up really well in the country now, and it's still booming. So that's something which people can look at, managing sporting events, managing teams. You can be part of the administration of a particular federation. You could be part of the administration of a team, handling their everything. You could get into coaching, or you could also open academies, run that. You could look into the sports psychology part of it. So someone who's interested in psychology and sports, they can explore sports psychology, physiotherapy, specific nutritionists who are into sports. We have strength and conditioning coaches, like fitness coaches who are specific to sport. There are yoga instructors who are specific to sport. So it's like a whole new world out there. So many aspects that can be explored within the sporting world. So if you're not just playing it, but you can be part of the sporting ecosystem in many,
You
many
mentioned
ways.
coaching, and I realized we didn't cover this about the importance of coaching, or at what age do you need coaching? Because you said if you're a beginner, so you go to a local range close to you and you figure out, how it works. When does coaching come into the picture?
I think it comes in from the very beginning, because it's something like when you're building a house, when you're constructing something, you want the foundation to be strong. घर की नींव सबसे strong होनी चाहिए, and I feel it's very important in the sport, because if you learn the correct foundations in the beginning of your sporting journey, it goes a long way. So then after that, it's more about brushing up, honing those skills, adding on to it. But in case if you've come from a place where you've learned the wrong things and you've not learned the correct basics and you're not able to do it, and you've reached a certain age and you've been playing it for a couple of years, and then you go to a coach, then what will happen is then they'll have to deconstruct it and construct it again from the beginning. So it's very important to get correct guidance and correct coaching from the beginning, because it's like, spend more initially and save more later.
And how good is access to good coaching and infrastructure for shooting in India for beginners?
It's definitely developing. There's still a long way to go. But then, government now, since the past 2 years and all, they've started these coaching courses for coaches. So they're grooming, like our National Rifle Association is grooming coaches all across the country, whether they are beginner coaches or they are expert coaches. So there are various classes which they have to undergo. It's a certification course, and they're taught all aspects of the sport. They're taught all aspects, what they need to be doing and everything. So now what's happening is the coaching system is also getting standardized. And earlier there were a lot of people who just take it up and then they were coaching, and then it didn't make sense about what they were doing, because for most of the people it was just business. So now NRA said, like our association said that, okay, fine, if you're going to do it right. So a lot of those coaches were called, they're being educated on the various aspects of different sports, how to deal with kids, how to deal with youngsters, adults, what kind of coaching to do. So I think definitely there is a positive change in the whole coaching scenario, and there is access. But of course, when you do visit a new range, or when you do visit a new person that you're trying to see, learn more about them, ask them about their qualifications, understand that, because there are still some people who may not be entirely very well educated in the in the sport, and they take up coaching. But more or less, it's definitely
That's fantastic to
moving the
know, because I
positive
think
direction.
even standardization in coaching is so crucial. I mean, and we've colloquially everyone refers to the Chak Day as an example, where you see, different players coming
Yeah.
from different states and adopting different methods of doing it. So I think
Yes.
that's a great step that the association is taking. Just in our final segment, Shriyanka, I want to ask you, what's next for you in your shooting career? Are there any upcoming goals that you have, or events that you're working towards?
Yeah, so I'm very excited. The new Olympic cycle has just begun. Last Olympic cycle, I very narrowly missed making it to the team. I did win the Olympic quota, but I did not make it to the final cut for the Olympic team. But I feel like past couple of months, I've learned so much and I've grown so much as an athlete that I really, really look forward to this upcoming season. And I know I'm going to be outstanding in this. I'm aiming to, of course, Olympics is the ultimate aim, but I also aim to consistently do well and improve my techniques, improve myself so that I perform consistently well at the international cycle at the international level in this whole cycle. So I'm pretty
And
excited about that.
one does realize that as public, we tend to kind of glorify that moment of victory so much, but the ups and downs that every athlete goes through, and Abhinav Bindra had to face what he did at the Athens Olympics. Amanu Bakar had to face what she did at the Tokyo Olympics. Eventually, we all remember, the big moment, but I think that's really important, what an athlete goes through in terms of the ups and downs.
It's a very good point that you've raised. I would also like to say that winning moments and the good moments teach you a lot, but you learn so much more when you're facing a downfall or when you're going through a phase which is not so good. So the challenging situations, the tough situations are the places where you actually learn, where you actually grow, and where you actually come out so much stronger of it. So, sport is something which teaches you a lot of resilience. It teaches you that no matter what happens, there are so many, athletes have to go through so many extremes in their life. It's like extreme good, extreme bad, extreme ups, extreme downs. But at such a young age, imagine people like this again. Abhinav Vinda had said that when we have this promotion calls in at work, it's like once a year or once in 2 years for so many people. We face that kind of pressure, we face that kind of thing every major competition that we participate in. So it teaches you so much of strength within, and you learn in all ways. You learn by not excelling, you learn by excelling. So it's always good to look at the journey as a whole and not just look at the good parts of it, because in the end, it's all about enjoying the journey and learning through living in the journey. So it's that once you reach a certain thing, once you win things, you always look back and say that it makes sense or it holds value only because you've worked so hard for it and you've given so much,
And that's
as
something
part
that
of
I
your
feel
journey
as a
towards it.
parent also, because that there is a lot of failure, or what you see as failure, but it makes you very, very strong and resilient, because I feel like irrespective of what you do in life, the fact that you do sport teaches you, just the foundation of values that you need in life, that you got to be strong, that things may not always
True.
go in your
I
favor.
couldn't
Things
agree
don't
more.
always, and especially I feel for this generation, where you may be used to things. We live in a relative time of affluence. There is abundance of resources. So for the younger generation, I feel even more when you realize that you have to work hard, and results are not always guaranteed. And so you got to be stronger and more resilient.
Yeah, that's true. And each time you want to get the result, you have to work the same way. So it's not like Manu, if she got a medal, or Swapnil, they got a medal in this Olympics, that will just happen next. They have to start from scratch and they have to do it again, all over again, to do it every time. So I think it definitely makes you a better person. And like you said, it teaches you the values which you use in life. And it's not just about playing sport at a very elite level, it's about anyone who takes up sport even as a hobby in the evening. It's something which you'll see so much of change, so many changes in that person. You'll see so many changes in that kid. They start becoming team players, they start valuing time, discipline, so much about themselves that
Lovely.
it's a
Just
character development.
final question. Any advice that you have for young athletes and parents who are just starting their journey in sports, especially shooting?
So one or two things that I would say, which I always say. First and foremost is be honest in your efforts. So, when we take up something, when we start something, we are always expecting results. We're always running after मुझे medal चाहिए, selection होना चाहिए, ये होना चाहिए. But what actually will make all of those things happen, or what actually will make your journey worthwhile, is your effort that you put in. So you have to be honest with that. You can lie to your parents, you can lie to your coaches and say कि अच्छा मैंने कर लिया when you're supposed to do something. But you can never lie to yourself. You know it. So be very honest with the efforts that you put. Enjoy the game. Enjoy the time, because you're not going to keep getting it again and again. So make the most of it, enjoy it, and yeah, believe in yourself. This is the most important thing. If it makes sense to you, if it's your dream, that is what matters. Nothing else does. There are so many people which we see, so many examples where people were questioned and doubted and all of that. But if you have belief in your dream, you can make it work. You have to work for it.
Fantastic. I think this has been so very helpful. I think as a parent, I've taken away so much from this conversation. Thank you so much, Shriyanka, for making time for raising an athlete.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time interacting with you.